Today's video is brought to you by Audible, and you guys already know Audible is one of my favorite services out there. If you don't believe me, well, check the statistics. I've listened to 28 days of audiobooks, podcasts, and other phenomenal audio programs available on Audible. If you're like me, you don't have a whole lot of time to read. So whenever me and my son go for a drive, or I'm working on the computer, or I just have some free time, I put on an audiobook. And honestly, I look forward to those moments every single day. Right now, I'm currently listening to book 2 of the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, Shadowfall, on Audible. And Star Wars books are really great because they've got full sound effects and music and really great voice acting. I recommend you go for unabridged audiobooks though. However, I'm actually going to recommend you guys something a little bit different. Check out Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. It might be my favorite science fiction book of all time, and it's the first part of the Southern Reach trilogy. Also, if you like the movie Annihilation, well, it was loosely based on this book. Anyway, if you want to check out Audible, visit audible.com/EckhartsLadder or text EckhartsLadder to 500-500. You'll get a free month of Audible, which comes with not only a free audiobook, which you can return if you don't enjoy, as well as Audible originals, news, guided wellness programs, podcasts, and more. So linked everything down in the description. Thanks again to Audible for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Halo video. And I mean, this is a huge time right now for Halo fans. We finally got our first look at Halo Infinite after waiting almost 5 years. And I would say that reaction has been generally positive, with complaints, I would say, largely focused right now at least on graphics. Still, we learned a lot about the game. We saw a good maybe 5 minutes of footage out of that sort of 8-minute scene we got. And if you want to see my breakdown and general reaction to that, you can check out the video I posted yesterday. However, I was actually lucky enough to get to sit down with 343 on a call at least, and how it worked was me and a bunch of other Halo people in the community got to send in questions to 343 on Discord, they answered it, and they narrated a playthrough of the same demo that we watched during the Xbox event. And there was a lot of information here that you couldn't even hope to glean from the footage itself, and I want to talk to you guys about that. And some of this actually touches on some of the most controversial aspects of the product, and as I said, foremost with that was graphics. So I'd say that Halo Infinite looked pretty underwhelming. It has sort of been touted as the flagship product for the next Xbox. It's been in development for a long time. It's rumored to be the most expensive video game ever made, and it just sort of looks meh. Some of the textures aren't great, the lighting's not great, there's of course that famous shot of the Brute, which is not great as well. And one thing that I heard a lot of people claim online was that this is because the build used for this demonstration was a much older one. And it's definitely true that this wasn't, a build that was up to date as of this week. However, I'm gonna say this, temper your expectations, because based on my understanding of what 343 said, this may not have been as old of a build as some people are suggesting. Now, they didn't say outright how old it was, and unfortunately I wasn't allowed to record what they said, but to me and some others that I talked with who were also on the call, it sort of felt like they really deflected from the answer. They basically said, when asked directly how old the build was, that it is not the most current build, but rather than emphasizing age, they sort of talked about how they're always working on improving things. I think that this older build stuff is just wishful thinking mostly from Halo fans. I mean, we get this every time a new movie trailer comes out or a new video game comes out and people don't like the look of the graphics or the CG. There's sort of this idea that you can completely fix a game or make substantial improvements when there's only 4 or 5 months left. And people pointed to Halo 2, for example, which changed massively from E3, ignoring the fact that the graphics weren't massively improved and the fact that Halo 2's E3 was like a year before release. I mean, I just think people are really overestimating how much time actually remains in Halo Infinite's development cycle. And I mean, there's also the fact that this was supposed to be a showcase for the next Halo, but also the power of the next Xbox. So I just think it's a little ludicrous to imagine that 343 or Microsoft would purposefully show footage which is really out of date, especially with no disclaimer at the bottom. And there's just also also the logical thinking that if this were really out of date, then 343 would probably say so in face of what I'd say was backlash, although perhaps that's too strong of a word for it. So if you're expecting Halo Infinite to look radically different at launch, probably don't. I would say that some things might change. There may be some touch-ups or improvements, but if you look at the faces of the brutes, for example, to me that's more indicative of the fact that 343 chose to prioritize an open world over really great graphics in a linear game. And generally when you do go open world, and there are some exceptions with this, you do somewhat give up graphical fidelity in favor of just a more expansive play area. And on the note of graphical fidelity, another thing that sort of points to me the fact that there won't be major changes is the fact that that end shot with the brute was specifically chosen because it was supposed to look really good, and to me it looks fine, but I thought showing it on screen for 2 minutes sort of exposed some issues with Halo Infinite, or at least our expectations for what a next-gen 5-year development $500 million video game would look like. But let's pivot into the open world, because to me this is one of the more risky things that 343 has done, but I'm actually quite proud that they did so. It would have been very easy to simply make another linear Halo game, but with Halo Infinite they're clearly trying something different. I wasn't sure just how open the world would be, but they clearly said when playing the game demo that if you see somewhere, you could most likely go there. It does seem like the world is split up by these sort of canyons, and I'm not suggesting that you can circumnavigate the ring or anything like that, but the local play area in particular, and the dev specifically said those mountains over there, is all areas that can be visited. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. I think it could be really cool if done well. I do hope though that the linear experiences which make certain Halo levels so great, I'm thinking of like the Covenant for example, can still be maintained on this open world. Another thing I was wondering was just how deep into these open world mechanics they were going to go. I mean, I saw the skill sort of menu, I saw that there was a difficulty rating on the mission. I was wondering whether traditional Halo difficulty was going to be abandoned altogether. However, the devs said no, you still do choose difficulty during an options screen or on the main menu. So maybe the difficulty there is contextualized, and this is one thing that I'm not really a huge fan of, because I like Master Chief being really strong when you start the game. I'm not looking for like a Metroid experience where you've got to go back and collect everything you've lost at the beginning. I guess I like difficulty to just be scaled up by encounters, so if they're doing that and the final encounters are just with more enemies or whatever else, that will be fine. However, if they do something like increasing the base health on each enemy or something like that, I'm not going to be a huge fan. That would be a little too much of a stray from the standard Halo campaign formula, in my opinion. We also learned about equipment and how that would work in multiplayer, specifically the grappling hook and the other equipment we saw in the trailer will not actually be on your Spartan in multiplayer. You'll have to do some sort of map pickup, I guess, depending on the game mode. I quite like that, because if you move things like grappling hooks and that sort of new bubble shield to an actual map pickup, it just essentially becomes another power weapon, something that you can consider when figuring out map control or player movement, instead of, you know, having everyone spawn with a bubble shield or with armor lock or whatever else. We didn't learn anything about sprint, but I imagine this game will be highly customizable, so probably there will be playlists that are completely classic movement, no clamber, no sprint, while others will just be fully wild with every new feature in the game. Finally, and I would say this is the most shocking thing we learned, is that 343 intends Halo Infinite to be pretty much the focus of all Halo content for perhaps the next decade. That wasn't their word specifically, but they made it clear that they want this to be sort of a starting point and a basis for future Halo content. For example, they said if you haven't played any of the games or read any of the books, that you can go into Halo Infinite and still pretty much understand what's going on. I thought that was very interesting, but the dev also made it clear that the plot that was set up in Halo 5 specifically will still be concluded or continued in some way. Although I do kind of feel like the Banished have been brought in as a sort of brush to sweep away the messy plot from the prior two games and establish something new. On the topic of it being a base for future games, I mean, it's just like it sounds. Halo might go the Destiny route and have a sort of hub game which is added to over time, either in the form of paid DLC or continual updates or whatever else. Personally, I do like games like this, but only to an extent. I like when a game has updates because it helps ensure that the community remains vibrant and fun. I would have given anything for more support for Halo 3 back in the day. But if it's going to be supported to the detriment of any future Halo game, especially where we're already having problems with graphics, well, I just don't know. That being said, I was really impressed by the gameplay in the trailer, and to be honest, although Halo graphics are very, very important to me, gameplay comes first without a doubt. But that's all I have to say about my meeting with 343. Hidden Xperia and others have also covered this from their perspective. Make sure to check out their videos for more Halo Infinite news, and if you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe and drop a like. Also, I've got lots of Squadrons footage on my second channel if you guys want to check that out. I know things have been a little weird and super video game focused for the past few days. It's just kind of how it worked out with the Squadrons embargo and the new Halo stuff coming together at the exact same time. That's all I've got for you guys though. Until next time, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.